Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Market Wrap. So I am back in Philly and I had a great weekend because I got to go watch Max play ball live. It was the first basketball game we got to go see in person. It was like going on a date with my wife. It was awesome. And now the conference tournaments are starting. My son Mitchell and his buddies are rooting hard for Bryant to beat Mount St. Mary's tonight, and if they do, they get a bid. This is why March Madness is just the best. So we had three great watches come across my desk this week. Now the first one is a relatively new piece, and it's the Moser / MB&F Tourbillon Blue Fumé dial. Just an amazing collaboration, very funky, cool, but the classic Fumé dial that Moser has made famous. Just an amazing piece you'll never get to see again. The second piece is, again, a limited edition. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago about the new Zenith, but this particular one is the CoverGirl remake. So this was a piece that's right out of the 70s. It just screams vintage. It's an amazing remake. I think they did a great job in this piece. Only 100 of them made for the world, so it's a rare piece to see in person. And the last piece is a Journe. And we don't talk a lot about Journe on this, but this particular one just struck me because Résonance is my favorite model. It's a 38 millimeter. It's rose gold. It's got a rose gold dial. It is incredibly rare piece. Just love having that. One of my favorites of all time. So the market continues to be strong, and now we're starting to get some financial data on the health of the industry. So as 2020 wrapped up, we're starting to read stories about, how the business kind of fell out. And I read a great story this week about the auction business in 2020. So overall, the 5 major auction houses ended up 2020 down 19% from 2019. Now, in 2019, Christie's was the #1 selling at 132 Swiss francs, followed by Phillips at 110 million, Sotheby's at 100 million, then Antiquorum and Bonhams were kind of at the bottom of the pack. Now, in 2021, Phillips took over the #1 spot with 122 million, and Sotheby's moved into #2 spot in 2020. Christie's dropped back to 3rd. Now, Christie's did lose the only watch auction. Now, I think we all remember that the year before they sold a single watch for $31 million. Hard to make that up. But even factoring that out, they had a significant drop. So overall, the auction business made a pivot to online sales, and Sotheby's alone had 129 online events. Certainly the most active auction house. And I'm very happy today to have the opportunity to check in with an old friend of mine, the head of Sotheby's watches in New York City, Rich Lopez. Now, I was lucky to work with Rich for 18 years. He's done a great job pivoting what is a very traditional business, a very traditional in-person business, to an online business, and doing it in record time. So I thought it'd be great to catch up, get his perspective on the market in the auction world. That was 2020, and also see where he thinks it's going in 2021.
Thanks, Mike, for having me on Market Wrap. It's great to be on here. I always watch your show. It's really, really good. So I wanted to talk about the auction year that we had at Sotheby's 2019, which was something incredible. We had over 100 auctions last year. We had weekly sales. We were trying to change the way people see auction. Instead of having a catalog, since COVID was around, that wasn't going to be possible. So with my background, working with you for 18 years, working in wholesale, being an AD, I was able to bring up Sotheby's to the forefront of digital online. We had great results. The weekly sales were amazing. We were able to bring in a new demographic of young collectors, as well as the established collectors, to start working with the auction house in a different way.
The other piece of news I read this week was regarding the difference in the mix of what auction houses are selling these days. Now, for years, at almost every auction, the top 10 lots were inevitably Patek and Rolex. Now, at some of the most recent auctions, the top 10s inevitably include FP Journe, Philippe Dufour, and other independents.
It was the rise of the independents. FP Journe was the hot watch of the year, where every Journe that we put up for auction was on fire, bringing incredible results. It's no longer just Patek and Rolex, vintage or modern. We saw the rise of the independents, Laurent Ferrier, Philippe Dufour with the simplicity, and we continue to see that rise in 2021.
Now, I think this is a natural evolution, as we've seen this happen in market of other collectibles. Modern art has always had new artists come onto the scene. Due to the rarity of some of these newer, smaller independents, I believe it was just a matter of time before people started looking at these watches and realizing how rare and collectible they really are. Now, some of the early Pateks were made in very small numbers. You know, one of their most famous pieces, the 2499, they only produced 349 over a 30-year span. And they consistently bring 500,000 to well over 1 million when they come at auction. And now we're looking at watches like that Journe we talked about earlier, that red 38mm resonance. They only made 5 pieces. I'm pretty sure whenever that hits the auction market, it's definitely going to land in the top 10. So our last piece we're going to talk about is what we're buying. And I kind of went retro this week because I've seen some great articles on kind of these 70s remakes. The first piece is Silverstein Chronos. This was some of the stuff that was made in the 80s, super colorful, super fun, really put watches on the map for kind of a fashion thing. We love seeing those. We don't see as many as we used to, but we're always on the lookout for those pieces. The second piece is the Omega Flightmaster. Now again, another great 70s chronograph, kind of a funky, big case, lots of color. Just amazing to find those in great condition as well, always on the lookout. And the last piece is the Panerai. Now we don't talk about Panerai as much as we probably should. They're still super collectible, I still love them, but the piece I'm always on the lookout for is the original Bronzo, the 382. It kind of set the market for bronze timepieces, and it's still one of the most beautiful pieces you'll see on the market. So that was this week's Market Wrap. Look forward to seeing you next week.